как темно.
Иди сюда. Не бойся.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. This is The Harbor with your host, the Kino Cowboy, and co-host Scott Keith. Today we're doing another Tarkovsky film, Solaris from 1971. We've done Mirror before on the show. I think that's all we've done though, Tarkovsky
That's
wise.
all we've done. I mean, each time it's a lot to chew on, which is the Tarkovsky. It's so crazy that like he only did 7 features, um, and then cancer took him, which is funny. I really wonder what he would think of Star Wars, which is this. So Solaris is the second greatest sci-fi film I'm gonna watch this week. The first being Revenge of the Sith, re-released in theaters, the true masterpiece.
No, but
Uh,
this is what I always like. Basically, I put this on a decade ago for 10 minutes, and then I got called by my friend to go to the cul-de-sac to go hang out, and then I never revisited the film. And it's been hanging over me for 10
I've
years.
done that. I when I was like 17, I watched like 30 minutes of Doctor Strangelove, and I was okay. I was enjoying it somewhat, and then I was still a little too young for it, but I enjoyed 2001 and stuff by that time. And then I had to like go do something, and then I didn't watch it for like 7 more years or something.
I'm kind of, I think it might have been a blessing in disguise. I think I had more to chew on now as a older man, I
Yeah,
think.
it's definitely yeah, definitely. If I had watched it when I was, because I remember like our buddy Cody bringing it up and stuff, and like, no, it's definitely something that, I mean, even as a young adult, it's hard. You don't have the life experience, which is something I say a lot. That's part of my problem with some of the so-called classics education in like English class is I'm reading certain stuff. I'm like, dude, I'm 15. I have no like
Yeah.
relevant life experience for some of these novels that we're reading. I'm not talking about like Huckleberry Finn, which I actually enjoyed because I was like, it's about a kid and I was a kid, but like, um, but some of the stuff like Wuthering Heights and shit, I was like 15, which I actually kind of
We
enjoyed that.
need emotional complexity for certain things. I don't know.
Yeah, for
Luckily,
Revenge of the
both
Sith.
both me and Scott have dead wives, so we're able to
Yeah,
relate.
dude. I have a wife I accidentally left poison around. She killed herself. So
Yeah.
this is what the police decided. But we're here to talk Steven Soderbergh's Solaris. That's the one
No,
you.
well, actually, I did watch this film and then watched Soderbergh's out of morbid curiosity, and then watched this film literally the second his ended as a palate cleanser. I watched it again,
Ooh, a palate cleanser.
all in a 24-hour period.
Damn,
So,
that's some of the densest shit like film experience I've
so
ever.
I will be talking about Soderbergh's version after we get through some of this.
I didn't have time. I've been it's weird. It kind of adds to this movie because Tarkovsky, he's not a chipper guy, it seems like, from everything I've seen and read about him and read that he's written. I have his book Sculpting in Time that I've read some of, but I'm like, I need to see more of his filmography before I like continue into this. But it's I was like in a weird like bummed out mood this morning, largely just because like I hadn't slept very well and I like just barely am making like rent. I'm like broke, it's 2025 shit. um and that kind of added to the experience because I was just like in my bed watching this, like kind of in that like fugue state that his movies put you through, where it's like
That is great that you brought that up.
it's like, here's the thing about Tarkovsky. You can argue he's pretentious and stuff, but like, also like people who argue he's boring, it's like it's kind of intentionally boring. And not even boring, but just slow. Like people don't get that certain slow movies are supposed to be slow because I think people are used to Hollywood, obviously. And if you're watching this, you're probably on board with us. where it's like you got to meet the movie where it is, and like part of cinema is its ability to put you in a trance-like state, you know. And Tarkovsky was, you know, a super believer in that, and definitely like it's weird. He worked from. I'm not saying he's like Lynch, but I think he worked from his subconscious a lot, and then but then I think from what I hear and read, he would get irritated when people like read symbolism and stuff he didn't want into his movies. I'm like, dude, but you're Tarkov. Like, you
Yeah.
can't work the way you do and then be like, why are people reading things into my movie? Like, what the fuck are you talking about? You Soviet madman, dude.
This
Fucking
movie
Rasputin.
is hypnotic, and
Yes.
I happened to have a similar kind of experience the first time I watched it yesterday. I was drowsy and I was kind of just laying there and fell into this trance while watching this movie and let it wash over me. And it was just like kind of when you're like a sleepy Sunday when you're resting your eyes and you're not really sure if what you experienced was like a daydream or what was reality for a second. That's really how the film was. And that's exactly how Stalker is too. So I was totally prepared for it. And
That's how Mirror is.
yeah, well, Stalker is probably out of all of them like the most
Yeah.
like
We'll
that.
we'll get there.
That is yeah, I totally was like, wow, I was hesitant to put it on because I was drowsy, but I was glad I did. Because it wasn't a drowsy where I was falling asleep, nodding off. It was just like a weird funk. I was in a weird funk yesterday, but I'm glad I watched it in that state. So, and going in, you hear about this movie, you hear people often call it, oh, it's Tarkovsky's answer to 2001. It's Russian 2001 because he didn't like Kubrick and he went and did his own thing. And I think these are very different films, and I think it's dumb to compare them wholesale just
You know,
because they're
compare them. I think in many ways this is a repudiation of. Here's the thing: it's not a repudiation of 2001. It's a repudiation of a lot of the ideology in Western sci-fi at the time, um, which was like a weird techno optimism, but also like he was more interested in the humanity of it. And it's
yeah,
weird because I'm comparing this to like contemporary sci-fi, where if we extrapolate, like a lot of contemporary sci-fi is dark because everything we extrapolate from that's contemporary, like it's not like the space race where you're like, we'll be living on the moon. It's like companies will control everything, cyberpunk. Like that's what it
yeah,
is now.
yeah,
So, in a weird way, like I think there was a lot of foresight in that he was criticizing our like that we had too much faith in technology, you know. And even though due to Soviet censors and maybe just his own preferences, he didn't go fully into Stanislaw Lem's, the Polish authors with the book it's based on, uh, like talk about God, but like he was bringing into this like how much of our humanity are we giving up, like trying to do these things and focusing too much on technological advancement when the space race is really just more than anything, it's not about science, it's a pissing contest between world powers is what it is.
right.
um so like definitely you have to, like if you really want to talk about this, like you got to bring up 2001 at this point. But it's I agree it's overly simplistic to be like this is like an anti 2001 because I don't even think it's an anti 2001.
No,
I think
there's like yeah, Kubrick's film is this bigger picture plight of man and the advancements, but also, what it means to be human. And there's humanity all throughout this movie. And you could try and like say, well, there could be some comparisons to the dead wife and how she struggles with sentience and humanity, and then Hal being hyper uh sentient. You could say that, but it's like the point I'm trying to make here is that Tarkovsky is taking his usual philosophical, poetic dialogue and discourse and dropping it onto a space station setting, and it works really well.
it does because
But
it and part of that's just because like he couldn't get funding for stuff. He's like, well, sci-fi movies are popular, make
right, but like space and space travel were more instrumental in Kubrick's vision. It's
yeah.
just like that's
and
more.
and, and it's one of those where first of all, like I don't think that 2001, you could argue it's certainly not entirely optimistic about technology because the villain of that movie is a rogue AI, like is the evil robot. You
Yeah.
know, popularized or let's repopularize the idea of the evil robot. Also, I haven't read Stanislaw Lem actually because I was like, it's one of those I put off Stalker and Solaris because I was like, I don't know if I want to like read the books first or like watch the movie first. I'm like, maybe I could read the book first for one of them and watch the movie first for the other. And then you're like, we're doing Solaris next week. I'm like, okay, I guess I'm watching the movie first and then I'll read the book for Stalker and then watch Stalker. Like, I don't know. I'm gonna do it that way. Also,
Hell yeah.
I've been doing other stuff. I've been reading other stuff. I reread Ender's Game recently, which does tie. I'm gonna bring that up.
Okay.
But I read a lot of old sci-fi. My point is like sci-fi and cinema, and I think like most ideas, like it follows sci-fi in the literature. Like the ideas are worked out there first because you don't need a big budget to work out the big ideas. And once they're kind of proven there, then they move into cinema. You know, Star Wars is a pastiche of a ton of old pulp serials and stuff. We already know that. And like a lot of these themes of like identity and communication and like weird alien intelligences, like those do have precedence in the literature. And most obviously, because this is based on a book. And then like 2001 was co-written with Arthur C. Clarke, who is like the hardest of the big hard science fiction authors.
Yeah.
But like the thing is like people are comparing these movies. It's like, well, these movies have precedence in the books, in the literature, not just that they're based on, but of the genre as a whole. So, I mean, if you're just like a film goer and you're not reading, you know, like dorky sci-fi magazines like I am. I used to read Slush for one, where I just like read unsolicited submissions. If you want to feel better about your writing, do that. But like it's, you know, there's precedence for all these, is what I'm saying in a roundabout way.
Sure. And this is a plot cell's nightmare.
Oh, dude, yeah, definitely a plot cells nightmare.
Well, the film opens.
All of Tarkovsky's a plot cells nightmare.
I know, but it's just like
hell, 2001 is a plot cells nightmare.
I know, yeah, exactly. They both are. But the way it opens with Chris walking around nature, it's quiet, it's serene. Several minutes of this, and you learn that he does this every day. And you're not used to this kind of storytelling. Maybe you turn this on because you're into sci-fi, but you're kind of struggling with these kinds of movies. Maybe 2001 wasn't your bag, but you have to stop and ask yourself, quit going by just the plot. You have to stop and say, what is the film saying with these images? What is it? How does it make you feel? Think of what those kinds of images are bringing about feeling wise, because those are just as important as plot points. I know I'm preaching to the choir here. I'm just saying, like, I sometimes I read a couple of reviews of the movies we do, even like older films. I get surprised when people are like dogging on certain aspects. I'm like, man, I don't know.
So in that Tarkovsky book I was reading, it's funny. Um, there were all these like critics and like intellectuals or whatever in the Soviet Union for the first screening of Mirror, and they were all debating, like they were still in the auditorium debating the meaning of the movie. And then some like old Russian Soviet woman came in as the usher to like clean up. And she was like, all right, everybody needs to get out of here. I have to do this, my job. And by the way, it's simple. This is a man on his deathbed thinking about and regretting about the things he did in his life and being mean. And then he was like, yeah, you like all these critics were debating it and you just like minimum wage worker just like worked it out right there. You know? Like it's not that complicated. And part of it is like it's emotionally complicated, it's formally complicated, but like and I think that's what Tarkovsky's going for here is like you need to have like a core humanity at whatever you're trying to do, whether that's a space exploration or making a movie, you know. Because I do think, you know, tying it back into the day, like we have tech oligarchs who are trying to like they hate humanity so much they're trying to move to Mars. And it's like, what the fuck is on Mars? First of all, like we don't have the technology to do that. I don't know if humans are supposed to do that. Part of my problem with Interstellar is it kind of takes that approach. Instead of fixing this planet, we should move on, even though I'm pro space exploration. And I think, you know, Tarkovsky saw the bullshit in that, you know. of like, dude, like that we can't just like use technology to dehumanize ourselves, in the absence of God. You need to be humanistic, not technological in your like reaction to the death of God, if that makes sense. Man, now we have tech bros trying to make art and completely strip us of our humanity.
Yeah.
Dude, fuck him.
Well, there's the point. I feel like, first of all, I'm glad it takes its time in the beginning. I like this first 40 minutes or so.
Right. And also, you got to know, like, this is a sci-fi movie. Why is it showing so much nature? It has to be having a point here. And
Yes.
if you're already familiar with technology, you know that his filmmaking includes like the elements. I mean, like earth, wind, and fire sort of stuff. Like
Yeah.
as these primordial forces.
It is very important because that feels like he keeps calling back to nature in the movie, and that seems like the thing that is pulling humanity back to Earth consciousness wise. And there's like, we learn in the film early on that Burton, one of the things that first appeared to him was a garden. And that seems very purposeful. And is that like a sort of temptation, or is it showing that he has a primal connection to Earth and the Solaris ocean picked up on that? That seems like a very core part of the film. That's why I think it starts with Chris walking around and enjoying Earth's greenery and nature and stuff. And it gets more into that as it goes on, and it keeps going back to nature. And I don't know, it's strange. And it's like the imagery that Burton, when he gets closer to the planet, the stranger things get. And like, it's such a fascinating way to set up the mystery of what could possibly be out there. It lets your imagination run wild. There's none of this in the Soderbergh version.
Well,
They,
yeah, that's a Hollywood version.
I know, but
I just watched,
they go
I
to
watched.
space in 6 minutes.
Oh yeah, I watched the trailer for it, and I'm sure this is just how that trailer was cut, but it did seem like an almost like they really emphasized the love angle. Like they wanted men to bring their wives to this movie, which
Dude,
most people seeing Solaris, let alone going on a date to Solaris, like date night, is insane. Um, yeah, well, I'll ask you about Soderbergh's version in a minute.
oh yeah, yeah.
By the way, just the balls to remake Solaris. I know you're adapting the novel. You're not just like, I'm gonna remake I'm a
Yeah.
Seraph, like, but like the hubris to
That's
try.
why I went in like I was trying not to be mad. I was like, well, it's a novel. He can adapt the novel if he wants. But then I saw like the runtime 98 minutes. I was like, oh my God, what is this?
It got chopped. I'm sure. Listen, and I like Soderbergh. I like. We saw The Presence in theaters, which was like a fun experiment, of a film, like kind of an experimental film in a way. And I like the Ocean's movies, of course, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But so I respect the guy. He's a true champion of cinema. But like, there's no way in the studio system you're gonna make Solaris and make it good. Like I just don't think it's possible. Even if you are, you got George Clooney.
No, that movie's fucking dog shit, and I wish I didn't watch it. But
Dan,
I
straight up,
hated it. I
you
hated
hated
it.
it that much.
Yeah, I fucking hated that movie.
What's funny is a palate cleanser. I usually think of like a cracker or something simple, and you picked like one of the most complex goddamn sci-fi movies of all time. Here, let me watch Tarkovsky.
Well, I was
like
just so like,
that's like me being like, man, my cheeseburger wasn't very good. As a palate cleanser, let me have a Welsh rabbit or something. It's like that's a
I was
fillet.
surprised how drawn I was to this movie again. I really, really absorbed it. I just was surprised of how easy the second watch was for me. That's how into it I was.
And you have to watch them more than once. I was the same way with Mirror. The whole time I was like, okay, what is this? And then by the end of it, I got it, and then I was like, damn, I need to watch that again, and I still do.
I need to rewatch Mirror bad.
I'm gonna rewatch. Let's see. First, I'm gonna rewatch is probably all the Mission Impossibles before that comes out,
Yeah.
and True Cinema. and then I think Tarkovsky, I'm gonna really delve into his stuff more. Because I do think I want to see what his mommy issues are. He has mommy issues, clearly. Um
Yeah.
Almost doing match cuts between the character's wife and mother in this movie.
Yeah.
Um, because I have a friend, and I wish I could have done. It's out of state. They live out of state, but like they had like a university professor, film professor, and like expert in Russian cinema. They had like a screening series of Tarkovsky, and he would come and talk about him. He's like, "Oh, dude, you're gonna see so many mommy issues." Like it's kind of so. I want to deal more into that. Uh, it's one of those things. He's so obsessed with childhood. He had such a weird Soviet childhood. It's like I think a lot of it's just like I don't know. I do think that to a certain degree, like I think there's a lot of like armchair Freudianism that goes around of like people date their mothers or people date their fathers. But it's like you do date what's familiar and what's comfortable to
Yeah,
you.
but
And
like she looks so similar to his wife in this
yeah, and
movie.
then there's a point where it's like, okay, you're really hammering it.
Yeah, to a freaky degree.
Yeah, it's like weirdly, this is the like quasi incestual part is the least subtle part of your goddamn
Yeah.
complicated ass movie.
What I like is that there's this sequence. We get a sense of like Chris and how he lives, and it seems pretty peaceful. And obviously, we know it's gonna be juxtaposed with the metal, gross clunkiness of dark space. But
Sure. And
we
then
get this
later you
time.
learn like he's probably grieving. That's why.
Yeah, exactly. And we get this guy Burton, which I think is fascinating that we really kind of get to know this guy in this first 40 minutes and then he goes away. But like we get so much of his character because it lingers on this film that he's showing to Chris before going up there of what he saw when he was up there. And he obviously still lingers on this trip, what he saw being condemned, talked down to. It obviously destroyed him. We see his hair's gone and he looks pretty rough. And it's clear that he cares deeply about the Solaris mission not ending. He seems desperate to have some sort of discovery or explanation for maybe some sort of closure. And then we leave him on Earth, not in control of the Solaris mission at all. And it's like the fate is not left up to him, but it's like his last ditch effort. And I find that interesting that we get so much time with him and then we never get any more. And
Oh,
I like,
Burton.
huh? Burton,
Burton's
yeah.
his dad, right?
Huh? No, Burton is the guy,
Burton's the first pilot.
the first pilot who's showing him the film, who's friends with his dad.
Okay. Yes. Okay. I got confused. Yes. Yeah, no, it is interesting and important. I want to add real quick on the opening imagery. Part of my reading from it is like so water is what leads to life, right? And even to the point like we look for plants that might have water to see if they have life. But in this movie, it's like the ocean itself is alive, but with no visible life of its own. It's not even really an ocean as we know
Yeah.
it. Um, but we see the opening shots is like algae and different plant life under the water. So like water itself is not alive. It's just a purely like to me it represents like a purely scientific substance. And it's saying like unless it leads to growth and a sort of like vibrant life, there's no point to it, to this sort of like pure science or pure technology. And it's contrasting the use of water on Earth versus like the cold, lifeless oceans of Solaris. um like with water specifically as an element, you know but like that in and of itself it doesn't mean anything.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Well, I mean, that's elemental. It's part of it. Because, like
Yeah.
I said, like one of the main aspects that makes everyone in the room turn around, all the generals, all the military types, everyone's like, when he mentions the word garden, they're like, what are you talking about, garden? And then when he goes on to describe what sounds like almost like the Star Child from 2001, but it's not. And he reveals later that it was the same child that he saw at his friend's house who had died in the mission. So that's your first clue, but it sets Chris up as the cynic because right after watching this guy bravely tell his story despite knowing he's going to be ridiculed, he says, "What a ridiculous man." And then he goes out and talks to Burton privately and even tells Burton that he's going to either like send like in the program, send the station back, or perhaps bomb the ocean itself, despite not knowing what it's all about.
It's
And
it's such a Cold War thing where it's like, we'll just try bombing it with radiation. Like, come
yeah, it's just like we get the contrast of Burton urging him not to make what he says don't make science immoral after Chris compares it to, Hiroshima pretty casually. And of course, Burton would be disgusted by the idea, especially not figuring out what it's all about. Obviously, this has been bothering him for decades. You can tell that this is his last ditch effort. And it's such an interesting contrast that they would have Chris with the setup with him enjoying the tranquility of nature and earth and then be like immediately down to bomb this place and compare it to Hiroshima. Like what a weird contrast.
dude, he's in such grieving, and like an obvious and clearly was not a very good husband before this, and
Yeah.
detached from people already, to the point of like he's a psychologist, but it's not like he's a therapist. I think he's the kind who just like analyzes the fuck out of people and is hyper atheistic, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. In the movie, at least.
Yeah.
Um, that like clearly, I mean, he's walking around nature, but he's not appreciating it. The same thing, he doesn't appreciate his wife until she's dead. That's half the point of the goddamn movie.
Well, he's got to get something from it because he does it every single day.
Sure, he's at least trying,
Yeah.
you know.
But like there's this sequence when Burton does leave. You might think it comes out of nowhere or maybe it sticks out, but when I really thought about it, I really kind of figured what it was going for. And it's where he's leaving and he's being driven around the city, and we get this like very like hypnotic, almost rhythmic sequence of the city and driving and all these big concrete structures, and we're hearing these futuristic noises, and I'm thinking, well, maybe he's contemplating thinking back to his mission. He probably thinks about this mission every day of his life. That's what I think. And he's hearing these otherworldly sounds which are being matched with these concrete structures, and it seems to give off the vibe with these dense bridges and overpasses and roads that this might look alien itself, the way they twist and turn into each other, and it's concrete and it's man-made, and it's the far opposite of nature, far opposite of the garden that he saw, probably wanted to see, that Solaris showed to him. And it gets louder and louder as we get into deeper into the city, and then when it immediately cuts back to the country home, it's peace and quiet. The sound is no longer there at all. And I
No,
think that's the whole contrast of the film nature versus this.
right. It's the whole dichotomy, dialectic. Is that the word that film students use here? I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, it is. I think that's Tokyo. I think it's like we don't have anywhere futuristic enough in the Soviet Union, so we have to go to Tokyo to get like our future city. Um, it is fascinating though, and also goes on a long time. And it really is interesting how like the idea of that has changed so much. Like I remember one time watching in our high school film class, which is like where we met basically. There was like an old video of like New York, and there's like steam rolling out and like tall buildings and bustling people, and it was supposed to be this idea of progress, and you could tell just what the way it was cut and the music that was put to it.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting watching that with a 21st century perspective, where you know about climate change and stuff, where you have like a completely different view of that. And so, I mean, environmentalism, at least in America, started like really getting big in the 60s along with everything else.
Yeah.
But like, for a long time, it was just like, I don't know, like that. It was rarer to have that sort of sentiment back then that say, hey, there might be drawbacks to this sort of like post-war industrialization, massive scale industrialization.
Totally. And while I was talking about the juxtaposition of science and technology and nature, obviously, there's a lot of themes in this movie. There's different things bubbling back up, grief and then regret, and obviously he has a lot of guilt. But also there's this science and faith aspect, and I don't mean faith as strictly religious. I mean things that aren't quantifiable, like love, which we have kind of dissed on in other executions with Interstellar.
I just on it in Interstellar. I'm an
This is
ass.
done differently though,
Yes.
in a more interesting way to me. And it's like Tarkovsky really kind of wants to marry the two, which is like oil and water in a way. He has this fixation on the top tactile aspect of the world, and then the character at the beginning, how he does that, and then he has to deal with his very humanistic problems on this cold, isolated thing in space, and they're trying to figure out if they can even quantify these guests as they call them, and but and what is love and what's being human, and it's just all these ideas thrown in here, but they all work so well.
Do you think the planet is sentient at all?
It's hard. I don't know.
Or is it just kind of like taking whatever their because at one point they're like, we're going to send your brain waves to the planet. There is some
Yeah.
techno babble in this where there's like
Yeah.
neutrinos, like they're just kind of make things up. Or not make things up, neutrinos are real, but just kind of throw around technical terms where like who cares.
It's worse in Soderbergh's version. Oh my
Oh,
God.
okay.
It's
Oh, what
so
do they say?
bad.
Soderbergh's version. What do they do?
Oh, it's like they're trying to explain everything they can for the American audience with any kind of science gobbledygook to the point it's like you're saying so much stupid sci-fi shit that it doesn't even matter. Like, why are you trying to explain all this?
Like, we need to neutron the neutrinos so the
I
gravity.
created this spazzer ray for the Garbodon. I don't know, just like random
Almost like
shit.
Rick and Morty level of gobbledygook.
Yeah, it's just like, okay, you don't need any of this. We get it.
Dude, I'm fine with some like sci-fi gobbledygook for the plot, you know?
Yeah, but
Uh,
for this, you want
that's
to,
not the focus. That's the entire point of the movie is that it's not the focus.
it's not the focus. You want a little bit of a mystery element to it. Well, just like you can't quantify love, quote unquote, so you shouldn't be able to break down every single technical aspect of this movie and have it explained to you. So,
No, dude, I need my Tarkovsky to be scientifically accurate.
yeah.
I do some like hard sci-fi nuts kind of get on my nerves about that stuff. Star Wars isn't really science fiction. Who gives a fuck? I don't even disagree, but is that thing like so clearly Alex Garland in the movie Annihilation borrowed heavily from Tarkovsky
Yeah.
because it's a very otherworldly, almost non-sentient alien intelligence that's just like trying to mimic us. And it's almost like I don't know, the way I read it is like you have this inert sort of like living but not quite sentient sort of like surface, and with its interaction with like human consciousness in some weird Tarkovsky way, like almost that brings it to life, you know? Like it almost like it's living, but without like any sort of human soul. It's not really sentient, you know? And then
Yeah.
it starts like Hari, for instance, starts to become sort of sentient. But then you're getting into these classic sci-fi problems. It's like, well, like, is it really sentient? And it's not even that. It's just philosophy. It's like, you know, if I'm talking to like a robot that like looks and sounds human, like is that consciousness? Is it really thinking, or is it just a robot? It's the same thing here. Or it's the same thing as like if I make a clone of me, is it me or does it become a new person? Like it's all the
But then it
classic
gets
sci-fi.
into, do you believe in a soul or do you not? So,
Yeah, which I think Tarkovsky, I mean, he's got to believe in like something, you know. Though he's too spiritual of a filmmaker to not believe like that there's some like unquantifiable
Yeah,
fame.
because that's what he's
Yeah,
commenting on.
yeah,
As hard
exactly.
nosed as this guy would appear to be, I was actually pleasantly surprised with what he was saying about this kind of stuff. And because he purposely has Chris be this super cynic, and then immediately he folds and he starts, obviously succumbing to what might be madness. But he really, the way in the last 30 minutes he's defending her as her own person outside of his wife is very interesting.
It is, but also it is the ultimate of I'm not in love with her, I'm in love with the idea of her.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, it's pretty
it,
brutal.
it's brutally just like this is a projection of my memory of her and like
Yeah.
of what I want her to be. Like it's this weird like manic pixie dream girl I like projected from my mind.
It's so important though that we only really see this version of her
Yes.
because that's what we have to go off of, and we know this isn't all that she was. And that is where I was astounded watching the Soderbergh version. The Soderbergh version is 50% flashbacks to his marriage.
Mm.
Like it just keeps cutting back, and we're seeing the real her. I do not want to see the real her. This is the whole point of the character. And it's like almost fundamentally on every level. I'm like, how did he
Fumble
miss?
this.
Yeah, like all it's missing is like a shootout, like action sequence or something to be like the most American version of a movie you could be. And it was just like, why would you build it? Like we have enough romance movies out there that are cutting back to the past for half the movie to see what their relationship was like. This is a far more interesting concept of we
So
only get
is it like the Notebook in space? Is that what it feels like?
dude. I mean, kinda. I don't know. It's just
I've never even seen the Notebook.
I'll
I've
be
somehow
honest.
that one.
2/3 of the way into Soderbergh's version, I pulled out my phone and was playing Pokemon TCG Pocket. So,
There you go. That says it all. If a
but
movie has me pulling my phone out, it has to be. I really because I really try not to. It has to be pretty bad.
yeah.
Um, I mean, I did take a break to heat up some leftovers in this because I was falling asleep and needed nourishment. I will say that, and I did log those calories in my calorie tracker app. But that's it. That's all I did.
No, yeah, and like the wife doesn't appear in this movie until an hour and 15 minutes in.
Yeah,
An
that's what I'm
hour
saying.
and 15 minutes into Soderbergh's, there's only 20 minutes left of the movie.
No,
And she's like in it and the opening shot of Soderbergh's film is George Clooney's character who plays Chris like sitting up in bed, hearing his wife's voice in memories, and then the second scene is him going to like a grieve meeting, where a group of
yeah,
people talk about their
like a
deceased.
not like AA, but like AA, a support group. That's the
Yeah, a support group, and I'm like,
word.
oh my God, dude.
It is that thing where like people dude fucking I hate saying it because it sounds pretentious and everything, but Americans have to be spoon fed, and I fucking hate it, dude. I'm not saying, and I don't want every movie to be like Tarkovsky. Believe me, I don't. As much as I appreciate Tarkovsky, I'm glad he's over here, and then other people are doing their own thing.
Yeah.
Um, like I usually I'm in the mood for something more straightforward than Tarkovsky. 9 days out of 10, but um, it's very frustrating, dude. That's my problem with a lot of the algorithm. I know I've just been going on rants against tech oligarchs recently in past several episodes. It feels like, but like I feel like it bleeds out into everything where it's like the algorithm, it's just like serving you slop that you think you want, but like it gets to that point where like people refuse to just like meet in the middle with art, and like try to see what the artist is doing if it's not immediately engaging. This is not an original idea I'm espousing, but like I don't know. Fuck technology. I'm with Tarkovsky on that part at this point. It's weird. I used to be like way more optimistic about technology, I think, like we all did, and now I'm just like almost a luddite.
Well, it's really the like we truly cannot predict where AI is going to go. That's the scary part of it. I think that's what really slowed me down on this kind of thing too. Because
No,
like,
but then also a lot of the like promises they're making are unproven. They're saying it's going to be able to like cure diseases and help global warming and do all this shit, but there's like no actual proof. It's all pure speculation to get venture capital, you
yeah,
know. And that's been Silicon Valley's MO is to like promise things, get a bunch of venture capital, and then like maybe deliver, maybe not, but you made money from venture capital, so who gives a shit? I don't know, dude. Fuck it all. It's all fucking dumb.
I like that. Like,
Tarkovsky's fucking glad he died in his 50s. He didn't want to see, dude, he didn't want to live any longer. He was probably like, fuck this.
I like that. There's like almost this not horror, but like maybe like a haunted house kind of aspect to this, where it's got this setup where he doesn't really know what's going on, but like he keeps hearing that jingling bracelet and g- his old colleague, how do you say his name?
I don't know. Don't ask.
Gabarian or Guybarian or whatever. He leaves like a video message and it's all cryptic and it's he killed himself and then Chris
Isn't
starts
there
to
a,
get
isn't
freaked
there a
out.
little person at one point? You see like a
Yeah,
little
yeah, you
person
see
in the
like
door?
that, but like Chris sees like that young girl and then he hears that jingling and he follows it and she's like not there anymore. And like all he sees is Gabarian's dead body. And then we see that it was that guy's manifestation, which is still somehow on the ship even after he died, which is like a haunting. It's like, oh my God.
It's so weird. And what's that crazy thing where like with Hari, at first I was like, wait, can anyone else see her? And then you learn like, oh, they can. They're talking to her. They're
When they
interacting.
are able to talk to her and shake her hand and interact with her, I was like, okay, this is the next level, like conceptually. Like it's one thing to be haunted by a dead wife in a movie that you feel guilt over, but like for her to be able to interact with others is really cool. It's almost like a
Yeah.
fucked up episode of Star Trek.
No, it's an incredibly fucked up episode of Star Trek. um, who knows, man?
And it's like the fact that not only can she interact, but the clues are starting to come together. Like like he already heard it. What I'm saying is like it's the fact that she knows who Snout is, even though she never met him. That's like the first clue that it might come from his subconscious, and then we get the clue that it's like the version of her I think that he found dead because she doesn't have shoes on and she can't seem to find her shoes, and she has the marking in her arm, and that's probably the last state he found her in. So now it's like once we get all of that together, I'm like, okay, yeah, this is very interesting. So, and then I like that his like it's so overwhelming. His first thought is like, yeah, I gotta get this woman away from me. Fuck this. I'm gonna put her in a rocket, send her on her way because I don't know what the fuck's going on.
That is funny. I could see that being like a Simpsons bit or a family
Yeah,
of it being like, oh, my annoying wife, let's put her on a rocket and send her away. Like it's
yeah.
almost funny. Let's put her out of the airlock like the alien. And he burns himself. But then he's scarred by that the rest of the movie. He's like one of those cosmonauts sending the chimp out to never return. I was like, thank you
Yeah.
for your science, bozo.
There's also like kind of the idea of like there's nothing really stopping these people from actually leaving. It's not like this force is like blocked their exit or something. Like they're trapped because their own minds won't let them. Unlike they kind of can't help but want to be filled to stay with these people, even though they know it's wrong and that it's not real. They just cannot seem to help it. And
Well, that's an interesting question. Is like, is there anything said of like they have to, they're on contract, they can't escape? Is it just like,
no, because he's there to decide if like they're gonna liquidate this shit and go back home, or
mhm.
if they need to stay and try and destroy whatever this shit is. So like I feel like they could have just been like, hey, let's all get out of here, forget all this shit. But no one, and it must be strong enough considering Gabarian killed himself out of shame instead of
Yeah.
just like trying to wait and leave.
Because it's all about, say it with me, it's all about trauma. Like everything now. But it is because it's like, how do you, it's a weird thing. It's like, how do you so I clearly think Tarkovsky's saying like you can't just run from your memories,
Yeah.
and from your traumas, but at the same time you can't let them run you. And so he's interested in like, how do you balance that? Which is a hell of a question. It's something I struggle with, is like, how do you take these past experiences and like grow with them, but not let them define you.
Yeah.
I mean, and I know, Tarkovsky had his trouble with women over the years. I mean, I'm sure he'd be a difficult man to date. So, and he never really comes to an answer for it. By the end of the movie, it's pretty bleak, honestly, depending on how you interpret that.
It's very bleak.
Very bleak.
The ending like made me sit up. I was like, oh yeah, this is the shit.
Yeah. What is your interpretation of that ending? If you want to go there yet.
Well, my thought was I was hoping that he was going to overcome his guilt and put his past behind him, and he would have the strength that no one else seemed to have, which was actually leave the station, leave Solaris behind, and move on from this trauma and guilt. And that's what I was hoping. So to see him succumb and be on the planet itself as deep as you can possibly be with, I don't know, it's just like he couldn't escape. He couldn't move on past it. So
No, it's one of those like, did he try to actually escape and just couldn't, or did he just give up? Because we see him like
yeah,
leaving, we think he's leaving, but is he just going to the surface of the
I think
planet?
now that he's so close to the surface that these hallucinations or manifestations are more powerful,
Mm-hmm.
and he was seeing what he wanted to see. Because like uh what's his name, the first pilot, he talks about the closer he gets to the surface, the more stuff started to materialize in front of him.
Oh
So
yeah.
I think that's what it was.
No, but then it's that thing where you're like, why, if you have that back home, if your dad and that farmhouse and everything is back home, why are you going to this fake version? Are you just like caught up in your fantasies?
Yeah,
It in the same way, like it's kind of like, I mean, just like artists who like spend all of their time and energy like making stories instead of living in a real life. It's like, well, why are you doing that instead of living in your real life?
yeah.
I mean, that can be.
Yes, I feel that way actually. One of the themes in my novel is one of the characters, which all my characters are coming from stuff in my own head and my own experiences, but like this guy's so focused on living in the moment, but he's not living in the moment because he's focused on living in the moment. And like he wants to be, and he's trying to be overly aware of everything and taking it in. But by doing so, you're not.
Yeah,
So
because then you're almost like dissociated from everything.
yeah, and that's a major part of that. And I take that from my own life because I've had trouble with that before growing up. And it's kind of insane. But
It's
uh,
like when I read about directors who like make a movie about family because they've been like shitty dads because they've been focused about filmmaking. I'm like, okay, you made a movie about like because you're a shitty dad, but have you tried not being a shitty
yeah,
dad?
isn't that the quandary? Yeah, it's
Well,
like insane.
that's like one of the things I think James Cameron in his Avatar sequels, it's going all like family saga. Is he was like, yeah, I was a shitty dad. So anyway, here's me spending the next 10 years of my life about being hyper
Like,
focused on this
hey,
movies
you know
about being.
what? Whatever you gotta do, because me
I'm
and
down for it.
me and Scott are gonna be there opening night for
Yeah,
Avatar
yeah. No,
3.
fuck your kids. I don't care about them, dude. Make those movies. Like
But
I would rather have Spielberg make movies than be a good dad, honestly, than be there for his kids.
Yeah, because
The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. That's sci-fi.
what I do like is that, first of all, an underrated idea. I just want to break away for a second and say the library in this movie kicks ass because it's like this wood panel, like chandelier, like really cool room in the side of the space station. It's like, why haven't more space stations have these kinds of like random interior? Like you can do whatever you want. It doesn't have to be all nuts and bolts and tin cans and shit. Like,
I mean, if we're getting to the point, like, I agree, like, aesthetically, if we're getting to the point in a story where you have the technology for interstellar travel, like, you should have the technology to, at least on the interior walls of the spaceship, have some, like, cooler structures. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Wood paneling, maybe it's steel underneath, but you got some wood paint,
yeah,
Um, well, I also think that, again, that goes in what he's contrasting, your sort of like creative, this is a false dichotomy, but like your right brain sort of way of seeing the world with the like cold sterile left brain way of seeing the world,
yeah, totally.
which is so interesting because like film's such a technical medium, and he is in a lot of ways like a very technical filmmaker, like very precise, but like he does it for like these weird dreamy things. His views on like cinema being a completely new art form, like completely separate from all other art forms, is really interesting because most people kind of view it as like a culmination of all the other art form of being multimedia, but he's like, no, it's completely different. I don't know why he sounds like Nixon, but I don't know what he is.
That well, what we were talking about at the beginning, how the film, like, we are both kind of drowsy or in a kind of
Mm.
fugue state watching it, and it's amplified by this movie. But like, he replicates that feeling of like when you wake up from a weird dream in the night and you're like sweaty and disoriented and everything seems kind of off. That's very much the feeling of when the wife comes back a second time and it's like in the middle of the night and it's orange in the window and you can see her silhouette. And this guy, first of all, he's like perpetually sweaty and it adds to it. But yeah,
Yeah,
and
no, but
this,
and then he gets like burns on his face that are like his face is like blistered throughout
yeah,
because he tries to blow up his wife.
he didn't get out in time, didn't think it through. He was just trying to get her the fuck out of there.
Yeah, I don't. I know the Soviet Union. I know OSHA is an
Yeah.
American organization, but do they not have some equivalent of that over there? It's like, do you just walk up to the rocket and press a button after run away like it's a bottle rocket, like it's a firework? You gotta just like, run out of there.
They did not think that through.
No.
But also, like, he was that desperate to not confront his own problems that he was willing to get burned by it, is kind of the thing there. So it works. But any other movie, it would be like almost Austin Powers esque. Like,
No, it's so funny. It's like my wife. It's that level of like comedy if you take it out of context.
yeah.
It's so funny.
Once again, he's connecting his wife to the elements because he's trying to like it does flash back to his childhood and there's the outdoors and the snow and the elements and his mom who looks like his wife and then you do see his wife and I don't know if he's like trying to show her like a video or something or if it's just his memories but because it kind of like it was hard to tell at some points when they were watching stuff. I'm like, oh, this is a they're talking to each other via
I think what he was doing is because he uses that like almost black and white. It's kind of bluish too,
yeah
but like the black and white color grading for video. But it also seems like he uses it in some sequences in memory. Like that's because his view of cinema, because it's time, it's sculpting in time,
yeah
as he calls it. Like it is memory. Like cinema is memory to Tarkovsky. Like and it all comes from like your personal experience and your subconscious. So like I think he's saying it doesn't matter, it's the same thing.
yeah
You know.
another this made me think of like the kind of aspect that I've heard a lot where someone dies and everyone says, well, they live on in your heart, as long as you haven't forgotten about them, then they still exist in some way. And obviously you see that much here, but manifested into reality in a way that's like actually scary. And this woman is his memory of him, yet thinks she's alive. She can actually sleep at this point, and she's starting to feel enough and have enough memories to question her own reality. And that's the horror aspect of this movie to me, is that concept of like she's just a memory version, but she's obviously having her own existential crisis. She's crying, she's in tears. And when they're in the library, she's even like escalating it, like saying, "How dare you, talk to me like that, like treat me with respect and stuff." But there is that like, what is consciousness aspect that terrifies me outside of film every day. So now
Yeah, every goddamn day.
seeing it in this context was just like, yeah, I needed to watch this.
Also the whole like people remembering you is as long as you're remembered, you'll live on. Like, dude, when I'm dead, I'm dead. I don't know. Like that's why like being obsessed with legacy. Like, do I want people to remember me like positively? I want to be like, yeah, he was a good dude. I don't want him to be like, fuck that guy. I'm glad he's dead, obviously.
But
But at
it
the
doesn't
same
matter, you're
time,
dead, so who cares?
yeah. But
Not
also,
to
yeah.
sound like a nihilist, but like it's hard to.
Well, it's the whole like it's like the episode of Futurama where Bender becomes a pharaoh and he builds a giant statue that's like remember me. Like who gives a shit at the end of the day? And
Yeah.
it's weird because that's why we get so many like great works of art, and that's why people, Michael Jordan's Michael Jordan. Like it takes a certain degree of sociopathy, but at the same time, it's like I don't like why do it?
Yeah.
It's like comics who are so obsessed with making it but don't seem to actually enjoy telling jokes. I'm like, well then what the fuck, you don't put yourself
Yeah.
through this hell like to be remembered. Like most people haven't listened to Lenny Bruce if they've even heard of him. It doesn't fucking matter. Also, he's fucking dead. So I don't know. Throw me in
That's
the
like
trash.
that's what Snout says about Iberion or whatever his name is. Like he says something like he wanted to be in the ground with worms. He didn't want any of this that they're kind of trying to explore.
Yeah, some of this sort of like I know there's programs where you can like get your ashes launched into space. I'm like, fucking why? Like, I don't know. I guess it's kind of cool. It's cool when you're alive to be like, yeah, I'll be in space. But like once you're there, you're not gonna notice. I don't know.
Yeah.
You can just sign up for that and then they fucking bury you. You wouldn't know
I
the
like
difference.
the one the where you can get turned into a tree. That's kind of cool.
I like the mushroom suit. I just like that because that's like providing for the earth.
Yeah,
That actually does
that does
like
something.
that does something positive. It's not purely egotistical.
The
Or
fifth
like
dimensional beings aren't going to be able to take your ashes and scan your DNA and bring your consciousness back into a
yeah, but
body.
then will it be you or will it be a clone? Then
Yeah,
we're
exactly.
we're back to square one.
Yeah.
It's the whole like teleportation thing. If they like split apart your atoms and bring them together, it's like, is that you or is that like a clone of you? If you're like beaming like Star Trek. I don't know. Now we're fully into gobbledygook, but
Yeah, but that's why we watch this
that's
shit
why
and
we were
talk about
that's why we
yeah.
watch this and
Because
revisit.
like that's the most interesting part is when they're at the dinner party
Oh, that's when we get
and she's
Tarkovsky
saying
just like
like
quoting the myth of Sisyphus and just saying shit.
she's like she's like mad that they're talking shit to Chris, and she says that he's the most humane in the way that he deals with all this going on. And she says it's interesting you treat us, the guests, as external, as a hindrance, but we come from your consciousness. I think that's very telling. And she says she feels she's becoming human and she can feel just as deeply. But it's like, how are we to know if she's telling the truth or actually knows if she's telling the truth or not? It can't be determined. So what does it matter?
Yeah, this is a horror movie more
And
than a
what?
sci-fi.
Yeah.
I
If
mean,
she feels,
it's in a weird way, despite aesthetically it not being, it's one of the best examples of cosmic horror I've ever seen.
yeah,
Because it bugs me. Like a lot of people think cosmic horror is just like blur, tentacle monsters in space, blur, Cthulhu. It's like no. That's not it.
no,
That's the bastardization of cosmic horror by subsequent writers because copyright laws weren't as strong back then.
yeah.
Um.
Because
So
if she can feel simulated pain, and if it is just quote unquote simulated or suffering, but is that not just as valid? Because it depends on maybe, I guess, what you determine her consciousness level to actually be. But then it's like, well, could that be the same for fully sentient AI? What does it really mean to be human, etc.?
Aren't we just electrical impulses?
Yeah.
Um, Also, that actress who plays his wife is like 18, dude.
Really?
She's very young. Maybe not 18. Well, first of all, she's younger, and I thought that was just like from his memory. He imagined like a younger, hotter version
Oh,
of
yeah,
his wife.
10 years younger.
Yeah. Does he say they're 10 years
Well, I
younger?
mean, she died 10 years ago, so
Okay, so she's
it
supposed to
would
be like,
be a younger version.
okay, so she would, even if she's a little bit younger, he's 52, so he was 42. So we can just say she's like 35 or
I
so.
hope.
I would hope.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, it's Oh no, she was actually 8 when she died. Now she's 18.
Oh my God.
Yeah, Soviet Union was weird. No, I don't know. I think the actress was pretty young, but also just like, I don't know, Soviet life made you age, when you were working the fields or whatever.
It also brings up the thought of like I said, like, oh, as long as you're living
Is
in.
it cheating if he has sex with that version of his wife? Is that what you're gonna say?
No, no. I was just
Oh, okay.
when it was bringing up those thoughts of, like I just said, you're in my heart. As long as you're in my heart, you'll still exist in a certain way. It makes me think of the other idea, which I love about Evangelion, is that they're talking to Shinji in that weird whatever state he's in, and they're talking about how, like, there's 1,000 versions of you in the world. All of them exist uh, in everyone's consciousness, and they're all slightly different because of how they've interacted with you. But that's their version of you. That's real to them, and so that's how this kind of feels with her. And so that just
No,
adds to the question.
well, that is the thing. Like we our identities, I've heard it put in a very new agey way of like, for your consciousness to exist, it has to be observed by another consciousness, which is like a very like pseudoscientific way of saying
Yeah,
that. But like, no, that the whole point of like identity being fluid is, I mean, like I always say, like, I don't know, you act differently around your partner than you do around your boss, than you do around your family. Like, but those are all you. But this does get into that. It's like how people's perception of us like do make us real in their minds, and but then also it's a feedback loop where like we try to imagine their perceptions, which we can't get fully, and then we internalize that to some degree, and
yeah.
then that affects us, and then we act differently, which affects their perceptions. It's like I think the word is cybernetics if I want to be artsy fartsy about it, but which there is like a cybernetic researcher. I don't know what that word means. It gets thrown around.
But yeah, in the last 30 minutes, we really see, because she tries to kill herself again by drinking liquid oxygen or whatever. But we see Chris like start as the cynic of the movie, and by this point, he is like defending her as her own person, and he's even saying like straight to Snout and the audience, love is something we can experience but never explain. Like it is like Tarkovsky at this point is hammering in these themes, and I found that to be kind of surprising that he wanted to go in that direction, but I found
It's
it very
probably the most
pleasing.
explicitly. I mean, he's pretty explicitly more than he gets credit for laying out the themes. Even though
Yeah,
people say this movie is dense, which it is. I'm not saying it's a dense movie compared to most movies,
yeah,
but um, dude, the thing that I found kind of refreshing, because like people call Tarkovsky pretentious, and like arguably he can be. I've been really struggling with that because, like, here's the thing: people are Americans, especially, are afraid of being pretentious. It's like, dude, you have to risk that to like push into new frontiers.
of course.
It's like Francis Ford Coppola. I saw him like shirtless on the set of Apocalypse Now, doing a behind the scenes interviews in fucking Vietnam or wherever he is, in in the middle of the jungle smoking a cigarette, and he's like, yeah, you worry about being pretentious, but at a certain point, you have to just say, fuck it, I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do. And if some people think it is, fine. And like something can be pretentious and good. Like aspects of it can be pretentious, and I can enjoy other aspects or I can be like, it's kind of pretentious, but I appreciate what it's kind to do. I fucking hate this anti-intellectual just like labeling things pretentious to write it off, usually because you don't understand it. But like at the same time, like it's interesting how down to earth he is because he's pretty much telling us, and I think this is absolutely true, that ignorance is bliss. Because like the happiest people I know are not the ones who worry about the meaning of life or morality or any of these like highfalutin ideals. They just live their fucking life and like actually live in the moment, not try to live in the moment. They do live in the moment.
Yeah.
Those are the happiest people I know, are the people who live simple lives. And the ironic part is like the people who are like, you know, earners, the value creators who are like hustling, like innovating and like arguably moving society forward. Like, I don't think those are the happy people. Oh, I think those people, like your Steve Jobs, have like a gaping hole in their heart that cannot be filled because like they have some like evolutionary programming to like this hunter gather instinct to just keep moving and they can never be satisfied.
Yeah. Or you get like Miyazaki, who makes the most beautiful art, but he's like feels like tormented all the
Yeah,
time.
exactly. He's like, I'm not good enough. I feel that way, dude. Like I like I never think anything. I never think I've made anything that was good enough. Like if I ever say something I make, I was like, you know, that turned out pretty well. Like that turned out all right. That means I did a good fucking job. If I have like have anything remotely positive to say about it, you know, I'm terrible at taking compliments, dude. I'm the worst at it. I get it.
Yeah, I don't know why I get feel so embarrassed or insecure when people try to compliment my work. Yeah, it's tough.
Sometimes it's because I see what else they like, and I'm like, oh, if you like my stuff, then you must be a fuck guy. I must be dog shit because you also like that guy over there, and he's a fucking moron. Or you're just being nice. You know what? And this is insane, like backwards logic. One of the things that made me better at accepting compliments, because I've actually been people thought like people have thought I'm pretentious because I don't accept compliments, and they're like, "Oh no, he's just insecure. He's not pretentious." Like that's not. I mean, but somebody had to explain to me like the person giving you the compliment, it makes them feel good to compliment you. So just give them that good feeling by accepting the compliment and by externalizing it into like pleasing another person. That's how I was able to accept compliments in the most backwards, weird, low self-esteem way possible. Anyway, point is, I'm not happy because I do think about the meaning of life and all this. So that's what I'm getting at here. That's why I'm a miserable bastard.
Yeah, I want to talk about Soderbergh's a little bit.
Do it. Do it. I want to hear it.
Bugs the shit on me because like
Does it
oh,
even approach these themes? Does it get even close?
it tries,
Okay.
but not like this.
90 minutes.
People do, yeah. It's just like the pacing of this movie is part of what makes it. It's kind of just I don't know. Same for Killing of a Chinese Bookie. We talked about that. It's like
Oh yeah, Cassavetes, all these guys. What's his name? Edward Yang. Um, we did Eternity in a Day, but we forgot to hit record, so that episode didn't go up. But Greek guy, can't remember how his name is said, but like, yeah, that's the thing. When people complain about a movie being slow, here's the thing: there's the kind of slow like Andor where they're just trying to stretch out 2 hours of story into 8 hours and it's bullshit and nothing happens for 3 episodes and then people say
great.
it's the best thing ever and I'm like I'm not fucking watching this, nothing happened in 3 hours. And then there's the kind of slow that's deliberate where you're trying to get the audience into a certain psychological state, and that's the difference.
You can't diss Andor because then people will say, "Oh, you just like the Star Wars that's just jingling keys in front of your
Dude,
face,
fucking
nostalgia bait."
kinda, it's Star Wars.
No, but it's like there can be some in between. There can be some nuance there. I don't
But
want to
also
fucking
I want Star Wars to be fun.
yeah, you know. But anyway,
We won't go there.
the whole contrast with starting it the first 40 minutes being in that rural setting connected to nature is not there. It starts in this futuristic city. Look, it's raining and it's all cyberpunk and isn't it futuristic? And we're gonna have him grieving over his dead wife immediately because we have to set everything up because you can't just let things happen as they would in the plot of the film. But you know, whatever.
Well, yeah, to feel the absence of something, you have to feel it first.
Yeah. And like six
Like describing color to a blind man.
6 minutes into the film, they're in space. He like gets a message saying, I have to be cryptic. I can't tell you too much, but we need you up here. Only you can do this. I can't tell you why because people are watching me, but I need you to please do it. Oh, okay.
It sounds like iRobot or some shit.
Yeah, it's like
Which
six
is
minutes.
also terrible adaptation of a novel, which
Yeah.
I have read.
Oh, I
iRobot.
haven't watched it since like
Dude,
2007 or whatever.
it does not even come close to understanding Asimov. But who is? I haven't seen the Foundation series, but damn near can't adapt Asimov. But continue.
Well, I mean, this it's not really. I already talked about it. Mostly, it's like the whole movie is constantly cutting back to flashbacks with him and his wife, which undercuts the power of her just appearing in the movie. And then we have to learn more about her from him and only from his perspective because that is what she's from. We don't need to see the original version of her because
This is interestingly enough, a lot of my criticism of women's depiction in movies, especially older movies, is like it's always seen through the male perspective. But like
yeah.
here, that's kind of the whole fucking point. And so
Yeah.
that's why it works so well. It's an interesting way of like, especially a lot of older directors. I mean, hell, I'll bring up Asimov. Asimov was straight up like, I sucked at writing women characters at first because like the only woman I really knew for a long time was my mom, whom I didn't have a good relationship with. You know, he's like straight up. Like, yeah, a lot of old sci-fi dudes depiction of women is incelly. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to say it.
There's no Burton character, so there's no introduction to kind of like the myth and what could be possible with the planet. And there's less, so you don't really get that going in. You have to, it's somehow more vague in not a good way of like what they're even doing and what Solaris is. It's not even until like halfway that they try to ham fist explain things. And you get these intriguing ideas in the original of comparing and contrasting science and God. But in this, there's like a literal flashback where they're having a dinner party and the discussion with friends about how like saying like God is not quantifiable and how much George Clooney's character believes in equations. And that's all this is. And it's so lame that they just lay it out so generically, like bare bones commentary served on a platter. Like, this is what we're trying to say and
Which is
explain it.
interesting because Tarkovsky kind of does that at the end of this movie in the last 30 minutes, but by that point, it feels like it's earned it. Also, it feels like it's coming from the characters, you know,
It's
like
earned because it's this guy's done a complete transformation by the end.
right. And also, here's the thing with stuff like that it's like, I think it sucks when you have somebody come out in the beginning or middle and be like, here's what the story's about. But it at the end, like I always say, Shakespeare always did this, and he wrote for a general audience. At the end, he would have a like, well, what did we learn today? sort of thing. But that's like after the audience has already pieced it together for themselves, and that gives you something to talk about on the car ride home. It's not just disrespecting your intelligence, you know. I don't know. And again, it's showing the arc of the characters, not just laying it out. Yeah.
In this, it's like Soderbergh's version. Well, in the original, it's kind of the way they bleed into each other. It's like, where does science stop and where does fantasy or horror begin? And in this, it's like, no, we're going to have a meeting with the crew to try and explain with science gobbledygook how this is happening. We're going to stop the movie dead and tell you exactly like it's happening. And you
Does
get a
somebody
little bit
roll
of
out a
that.
chalkboard?
You get some of that with the neutrino shit in Tarkovsky's, but it's not.
Dude, that shit's so hand wavy though. That's like a few lines of like, yeah,
Yeah,
neutrino science were, and then they just like move on.
this is like try hard shit. And then the guy in the original who gives Chris a message via video somehow in this version, even though he's killed himself, he appears to him later and it's undeterminable how it I don't know. And I don't know, man. This movie sucks dick.
Yeah, Solaris sucks, but Solaris is good.
Yeah.
Is that it? Is that the review?
Solaris was so good that like I, watched it again the next day. I don't know. I really enjoyed this movie more than I ever thought I would. Not to say I didn't think I would, but it was just like weirdly way more digestible to me than his other films, but like still just as dense. It's almost unexplainable. But
You know, it's a good, and that's why I think that's one reason it's talked about so much is because I think it lays out its themes more explicitly than some of his other films, and it's good because you can compare it to other sci-fi films, and that kind of helps you like suss out what it's trying to do in contrast to those films.
no other filmmaker hypnotizes me like that. It's like crazy. Talk about being transported.
He's
Yeah.
the man.
Yeah. Okay. Final thoughts on Solaris.
Man, I pretty much said it all.
All
Also,
right.
it's one of those movies that's it's almost hard to talk about because like
Yeah.
it's all there in the image and in the movie. Like putting it to words is almost hard. You have to translate that almost.
Yeah. It was tough, but I don't know. It just felt so
It's
good
like it's
to.
no, it's the same. It's like trying to explain some of the shit in like Mulholland Drive or something. You're
It
like, yeah,
felt good to talk about because, like, it really bubbled up a lot of. Well, no, they were already there, but just some of the annoying existential thoughts that go on in my head. It was nice to kind of have a companion piece in a
it's nice to have someone as smart and as brilliant as Tarkovsky is being like, yeah, fuck it, dude. Just
way.
enjoy your life.
Yeah, it was satisfying in that way.
No, it's. I mean, I feel like Tarkovsky's just like, man, just go have a nice dinner with your wife and tuck
Now
your
let me
kid.
see what's next on the harbor for you guys for next week. Next week we will be doing Excalibur.
Okay.
So look forward to some dark fantasy.
Oh yeah.
Thanks for listening, everybody. We have over 185 episodes of The Harbor. If you want to go check out some other ones, we've done one on Mirror. If you want more Tarkovsky,
And let us know what you want us to do for our 200th episode,
yeah,
and why it should be
we're,
120
we're
days of
gonna do
stop.
it at Epic Universe.
Oh, dude, I would love that. Although, I mean, the crowds will be hell. I don't know.
It'd be funny as fuck though. Just
We're on the Mario Kart ride.
we're on Mario Kart reviewing last year at Marienbad. That'd be pretty good. But yeah, thanks for listening. If you want to support us, you can follow Scott at Scott K Comedy, me at The Mooring Line. You can find that in the description. Also, you can find in the description, I have a book for sale I mentioned in this episode. You can support me monetarily, help our channel grow. We really need support, likes, shares, all that dumb shit that is annoying to say, but it's true. Support us that way. Tell a friend, hey, if they have all these different films and I think you've seen this one. I'm going to share this episode with you. I don't know. Reach out, man. We're trying to grow our audience. So thanks for listening. We'll see you guys next week.